Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Throwin Bones MMA podcast. I'm your host, Adam Gerber, and we're back with another segment for the first time in a while on the Throwin Bones MMA podcast, because when we started this podcast, the MMA world was rife with news. And then for the past, a month or two, gone through a bit of a slow news cycle, and we haven't had much of a reason to do the news segment. But happenings happened, and we're back to the news. And you may think, Adam, is it Paulo Costa and his quote-unquote doctor trying to get him cleared to fight earlier than he needs to? Where in reality, apparently Costa just got one of his buddies to impersonate a doctor to try and fool the UFC officials into booking Costa a new fight. Is it Weili Zhang's, the fact that when you were breaking down the fight in the review, you forgot to mention Weili Zhang moving around camps and how maybe the coronavirus and her having to travel around the globe while training affected her training camp. And, what about her translator breaking down crying during the post-fight interview and being more emotional than even she was because he was so happy for her and not being able to properly translate either what Joe Rogan was saying or what Weili Zhang was saying. All that went past. A couple other things happened this week. They are pretty set on remaking Benavidez versus Figueiredo 2. I think that's a great rematch. I also think that's a great way to move forward with the division. All of the pundits talking, about the aftermath of Benavidez versus Figueiredo, and Norfolk talking about, well, if, I've always been a proponent for the flyweight division, but if you're gonna end it, this would be the time. And what a phony take that is. I mean, just because a champion moved up and now someone missed weight, so there's a vacant title, so shut the whole thing down after we've re-geared it and have been re-signing all of these people. It's like, we've saved it from certain doom, and on the way out there was a minor speed bump, so let's just torch the whole thing, I guess, because Joseph Benavidez didn't win, and I really wanted him to, and I've been following him for the last 8 years. Such weird talk. And there was so much of it. That's how you can tell the news has been slow, is because they're just making stuff up to talk about. Instead of just not talking about it, just make the episode shorter, right? Right, guys? I got it. Or just, get busy with school and stop making stuff for a while regardless. That's how a professional does it. Anyway. What else? I mean, there's two cool stuff we're going to talk about at the end of this segment, but we've got Barboza recently had made an announcement that he was going to move down to featherweight after his loss to Paul Felder. Well, initially he had his loss to Paul Felder and he was like, that's BS, I want a rematch, and he appealed legally to have it overturned with the commission, which literally never happens and was never going to happen. Then he was like, I want a rematch, and Felder was like, dude, I'll give you one, absolutely. Make it a main event, make it 5 rounds, let's do it, absolutely. But he got that fight with Hooker instead. By the way, now that he's lost to Hooker and isn't going to be moving up in the rankings, that Barboza rematch looks like probably a fantastic option. I'm sure if Barboza was willing to stick around, he'd absolutely get it if he wanted to get that one back first. So he's upset. He's, upset in multiple facets. He wants to appeal the loss. It doesn't happen. He wants to get a rematch, even though Paul Felder agrees. It doesn't happen, and he was acting like a bit of a sore sport. It was quite out of the ordinary for his personality. So you could kind of sense that there's some maybe tumultuous feelings that Barboza's having, and it makes sense. He's pretty late into his career. Stylistically, as far as elite level competition go, it seems that he's been figured out. Stylistically, it feels like there's a set game plan going in when you fight Barboza, and if you beat that game plan, if you follow that game plan to a T, you're expected to beat him, right? And I guess Barboza's not interested in sticking around in the UFC just to be, the gatekeeper, essentially, to be the test of merit. If he's not going to be, earning money as a champion, or at least pursuing the championship, I guess what's the point for him? So he figured, I guess initially, that he was going to move down to featherweight. It's more of a striker's division. There aren't the Kevin Lees and the Tony Fergusons and the Khabib Nurmagomedovs that are going to wreck you with pressure. He'd have a little bit more reach on them, have a little bit more power on them, hopefully. I don't have any idea how he planned on making featherweight. I thought he had a very tight cut to lightweight, and I guess that isn't in the cards like I thought, because now he's publicly asking the UFC for his release. I think he is pissed about the Felder fight and the fact that went nowhere, and I think he is also realizing that, I'm sort of at a crossroads in my career, and I could make a lot more money off the name that I've built somewhere else, and it's not like I'm either going to kill myself making featherweight to see if I can get a run at the shot, or I'm going to stay here and I'm not going to get anywhere near a title at lightweight anyway. So it makes sense to me, and maybe he was learning from another lightweight who's jumped the boat. Olivier Aubin-Mercier has just signed with PFL, Professional Fighters League, hoping to join the tournament that they do over there to win $1 million. And if I was Barboza, I'd be looking at that tournament as well right now. Thinking I'd have a much better shot winning that tournament than I do at getting the UFC title. And I think that was a calculated decision by both Olivier Aubin-Mercier and by Barboza. That was some other news for this week. Olivier Aubin-Mercier, the Canadian gangster, signs with PFL, leaves the UFC. So maybe Barboza's, he's mulling it over, he's not really sure, and then something like that move, he sees that, and he's like, that would probably be a better fit for me as well, and it's a great way to avoid bare-knuckle boxing. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Barboza sign with PFL. I feel like that's where he goes. He doesn't feel like he'd be a good fit at Bellator. I don't really know what Bellator would do with him, and Bellator seems to be sort of past the whole just like picking up any fighter that leaves the UFC thing. They seem to be really wanting to build their own brand and their own talent. But Bellator or PFL would be my biggest thing if they even grant him his release. Just because you ask for it doesn't mean they're automatically going to release you and you're going to get to go somewhere else. If they still see the value of Barboza as a name to get people in the door, then they're probably not going to grant him his release. Then we have Ciryl Gane. Unfortunately, Ciryl Gane is out of his UFC 249 fight with Shamil Abdurakhimov. Just one more down, another one bites the dust. As long as we have that main event between Tony and Khabib intact, you can literally cancel any fight, and I will simply thank you as a vestibule of sacrifice for that upcoming slice of greatness. Like I said, Costa singing his doctor, and then he was trying to climb the cage and jump in the cage after the Adesanya fight. Really nice to see that he took a break from kicking down nerds' sandcastles on the beaches of Rio to come out and try to generate a little bit more bad blood. I don't really think you need it. All you need to do is watch Paulo Costa fight, and you'll be excited for him versus Israel Adesanya. And then the last note of the week. A few nights ago, Brian Ortega was given a choice, and he chose to slap multimillionaire and hit recording K-pop artist Jay Park in the face. And if you're going, Adam, why would professional fighter Brian Ortega from the mean streets of California, why would he slap famous K-pop artist Jay Park in the face? Well, because of the nature of the absurdity of our sport, the Korean Zombie, who is a potential, I would say almost guaranteed future opponent for Brian Ortega, had been talking on the MMA Hour just about, obviously, just, talking trash. This guy ducked me, blah, 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 blah. Very normal, natural, benign stuff as far as I'm concerned in the fight game. To get better exposure, because he's on a brand new hot streak, he's clearly putting it all together on a straight road for the title since he's come back from his military service. The Korean Zombie signed with a new management company. There's the same management company, I think it's even co-owned, but the same management company that deals with hit K-pop recording artist Jay Park. because Jay Park has such a following, I think he's got millions of followers on, like more than either of these fighters, more than most fighters combined. He's a very popular music artist. Because Jay Park's such a fan of the sport and he's such a fan of the Korean Zombie, he had a personal investment in the Korean Zombie success, and he decided, I'm going to bring some of my attention, some of my exposure that I have as a famous recording artist to the Korean Zombie. So throughout the build-up for his next fight, I'm going to act as his translator. And so I'm going to be the go-between guy. I'm going to be the one who appears on shows with him and stuff. It's going to be like, the Korean Dream Team, Jay Park and the Zombie. You know what I'm saying? In translating just some of I think the specific thing was about Ortega's running from me, or Ortega ducked me, or whatever, because he's injured, or whatever it is. Ortega takes that and starts, I guess, misunderstanding. Well, not misunderstanding, because he later clarified, but initially everyone thinks he just misunderstands how translators work. And he gets mad at the guy saying it in English, which is the translator, instead of the person who's actually, it's coming from their brain, which is the person speaking in Korean, which is the zombie. Ortega lets Jay Park know he's not a fan of his words. Jay Park lets Ortega know, hey, don't shoot the messenger. They're not my words. I'm a translator. Ortega says, I don't care. I think his exact words were, in war, be careful who you deliver messages for. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean. Like, this is all getting very juvenile from Ortega. Ortega doesn't look good in any of this. First off, if I go professional fighter slaps K-pop artist, right off the bat, the optics are not good. It goes even farther. I'm going to have to get some reference material out. It goes even farther to state that once it all comes out and Ortega's been charged, he's been, escorted out of the place, he's been arrested, because he all did this during Ioane and Jacek's walkout. This happened in the fighter section of the crowd at the fights when it happened. Zombie pretty much calls him out for being like a piece of garbage, essentially, for attacking a civilian. But not only that, sitting at the event near them, waiting almost 2 whole hours until Zombie gets up to go to the bathroom, and then only approaching, multimillionaire K-pop recording artist Jay Park. Oh, and of course, so oh my god. So the Zombie calls Ortega out for, being dishonorable and not very much of a man, and calling his, manhood and honor into question over, waiting to attack a civilian as a professional fighter. And Ortega tries to justify it, I suppose. Like, he's already looking so bad here already. And then the extra, you wait until Zombie goes to the bathroom to confront the guy, looks even extra bad, extra bad. And then you come out and you try and justify. I was waiting for an apology today. He comes out and he says, on May 9th, 2018, Jay Park signed Korean Zombie to a management contract under AOMG Entertainment, of which Park is the CEO, and soon after, the trash talking began. So you can already see Ortega made the link between the company, and he's mixed up, market yourself better and talk about the fight more with, we're going to write specific insults for you to say at Ortega. He continues, when I finally made it to Korea for the press conference, Korean Zombie approached me with his translator, a real one, not Jay Park, and said, I want to apologize for the trash talk. I accepted his apology, shook his hand, and we had a great press conference. Soon after, I tore my knee, and the fight got canceled. 4 weeks ago, Korean Zombie and multimillion-dollar K-pop sensation Jay Park were the one writing the script. Oh, never mind. They went on Ariel's show and said that I dodged the fight. Dodging and injury are two separate things. And since I already knew Jay Park was the one writing the script, that's when I welcomed him to the fight game and warned him to watch his mouth. On Saturday night, I slapped 3 people at the same time. I apologize for slapping the translator, and I apologize for slapping the K-pop star. I do not apologize for slapping the instigator. And so since, charges had already been filed, that got deleted really quickly because super dumb thing to say. like literally just admitting to assault. And I just don't understand this. Such a not good, such a bad look. What are you doing, Brian Ortega? What are you doing? And then Henner Gracie, who I would assume would come out against this sort of thing, supports him in the comments as standing up to bullying. And it's so juvenile and so like high school mentality. And it is such a bitch move that you waited until Korean Zombie went to the bathroom to do that. Astounding lack of foresight here from Brian Ortega. Astounding. One too many Modelos, I suppose. But then you realize that it seemed premeditated, and he still thought it was a good idea. Just so tone deaf. So tone deaf. Unbelievably tone deaf. God. Yeah, shame on Brian Ortega on this one. That's my stance. And that is also the news for the week. Next up, we'll be talking about the upcoming fight in Brazil, headlined by Kevin Lee versus Chucky Olives. Charles Do Bronx Oliveira. And then in the co-main event, there's Gilbert Dorino Burns versus Damian Maia. And that'll be a great card. It looks like one of the best cards Brazil's had in a while. So we'll be back to break that down. Thank you for listening.